Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 160 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am here home in Lander, Wyoming, at least for a little while longer. I've been sharpening my sword. Those of you who follow me on Instagram know what I'm talking about there, and I've been talking a little about that over on the Patron podcast. So if you are not a patron and you would like to hear more, you can do that over there. I definitely don't keep up with that podcast as much as I should, but we're figuring that out slowly but surely. What does happen over there, I think, is really valuable content. So I'll be talking more about my sharpening my sword process over there. If you know, you know. If you don't, get in the know. Couple of things coming up. CWA, May 13th to the 15th. I will be talking about how the gyms are letting the core climbers down and some strategies on how they can do better. I think it's an important topic. If you're there, come see me. Also, May 16th to the 18th in Colorado Springs, Performance Climbing Coach Seminar. I will be there coaching again alongside Steve Bechtel, Tyler Nelson, Mercedes Pohlmeyer, Neely Quinn, Dr. Chris Heilman. And honestly, I think it's a really, really valuable seminar that anyone interested in coaching should definitely come to. That's Colorado Springs at City Rock Gym. So hope to see you there. There's a link to sign up in the show notes right there in your pocket supercomputer. This week has been crazy. It's been high octane over here. We released our footholds that we made with Escape Climbing, the resistors and the diodes. There's another set coming as well. These sets were made for kickboards or lower angled walls, 30 and lower. And they nearly sold out almost instantly. So those are more coming. So if you're looking for them, head to the website, see what we've got left. If you're a gym, if you're a setter and you're interested in those, Escape does sell them in all the colors. We have black and red here. Escape sells them in all the colors. You get your same gym discounts. So head over there, get those, help people get better at bad feet. Gyms don't do that enough. We also recently hired a new coach, Nadia Sante, who is crushing and has helped me immensely. So thank you, Nadia. And maybe the biggest news is that I've been here proofreading the book all week. Written by me, illustrated by my friend Brendan Leonard. If you're not familiar with semirad.com, get familiar. The book will be out soon. I've had the physical copy in my hands. I've been proofreading it. We've made a couple changes, and it'll be back to us very soon. So excited for this. All right, you guys are excited to get into this episode, and I've been jabbering about what we're doing here for long enough. So today's episode is with pro climber and just genuinely super nice guy, Matt Fultz. Matt is a coach with ABC Climbing in Boulder, Colorado. He is also one of the first pro climbers to really openly talk about his training in an intelligent way. He doesn't take a haphazard approach like a lot of the pro climbers do. He treats this like a job, like an athlete, and I really hugely appreciate that he does that. If you follow him or the Tension Training Center on the Instagram, you've seen him in there training, and we're going to get more into that, talk more about his approach, and I'll see you on the other side. Let's get into it.
I think the best training program is the one that you'll be consistent with. So it's always got to be fun. That's really the main motivation, and training can be almost as fun as climbing.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
So were you a comp kid?
Yes, I grew up climbing actually in Indiana.
Oh, really?
So,
You're a Midwestern boy.
Yeah, originally Midwestern. I've climbed in Indianapolis for about a year before we moved to
Crazy.
Boise, Idaho.
Was that like climb time era?
Climb time, yep.
Okay.
That was where I started climbing. So definitely.
I started at
in
climb
the gym.
time in Cincinnati.
Wow,
So,
no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there as well.
Yeah, cool.
Good times.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I was there for a year, and then we moved to Idaho where there were actual rocks to
yeah.
climb. But, I was definitely a gym rat as a kid and really got into competitions. So
Yeah, and you know what? Climb time was kind of a good culture to do that in, like to get started into at least Climb Time Cincy, and I assume Indy was
Sure.
similar because I know some crushers who've come out of there. you
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
Just a good culture of like a good community. Let's try really hard. It was kind of that old scrappy Midwestern sort of vibe.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And it was so much fun. I went back to Indianapolis maybe a year ago and stopped by the
Yeah.
gym. And it was kind of fun to go back to where I started climbing. But
Yeah.
nowadays, with like I'm living in Denver now. And, we have some of the biggest and best gyms in the whole country
Yeah,
and in
totally.
the whole world. And so going back to Little Climb Time, I'm like, oh, they're like, that's my roots.
Mhm. Do you
It's a
spend
lot
most
different than today.
Do you spend most of your time at Tension climbing,
Yes,
or do you
yeah.
spend a lot of time in the other gyms in the area?
Not as much, although I enjoy them. But yeah, definitely 90% of the time, if I'm in a gym, it's at the Tension Training Center.
Yeah, and I feel like the Tension Training Center and gyms like GP81 in New York or Crux Conditioning, my friend Paul's, one of our coaches, gym in Chattanooga, these little gyms that are popping up that are very focused on training sort of feel more to me like gyms felt way back.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. It's more in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I think even though they're not as big and flashy, you kind of can control the elements a little bit more. You have some old school grips on the wall where it's, crimps and pinches where you can just try and grab them as hard as you can and pull hard. You're making up your own boulders, which is my favorite thing to do in the gym. And it really takes you back to like I said, the early 2000s when we would go in the gym and it would just be me and a few friends and we'd try and make up a few boulders to challenge each other.
Yeah.
So I mean that's my roots, and that's kind of a call back to when I began climbing, and it's how I love to train the best. So.
How much do you think that making up boulders has helped your climbing, influenced your climbing? Like, it sounds like it's something you enjoy, but I assume you probably wouldn't do it if it weren't helpful
Sure.
to you.
Yeah, I mean, making up your own climbs is a kind of a double-edged sword. So you can really focus on your weaknesses, and you can set climbs that or maybe are geared towards what you're projecting at the time. So if I'm trying a 10-move boulder, maybe I set a climb that's more power endurance based versus when I'm trying a 4-move boulder. Stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't know what you don't know. So it's good to get into these other gyms and try boulders that other people are setting because maybe those will work on weaknesses you didn't know you had.
Yeah. And do you find it hard, like for yourself, because you're climbing at the V15 plus level? Is it hard to make up boulders that are challenging for yourself, or?
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about climbing. I think that you can always, make the holds smaller and further apart,
Yeah.
or focus on things that are really difficult for you. So, that's one of the beautiful things of climbing. You can never be too good for
when
it.
you go into commercial gyms, is it hard for you to find things that are super challenging, or is it more of a style thing?
Sometimes, yeah. I think I'm pretty lucky being in Denver, where there's a high concentration of really good rock climbers. So it's not too uncommon to walk into a gym and have 3 or 4 V13 boulders to try, and that's a good sesh. A lot of times I don't go into a commercial gym more than once or twice a whole set. So an entire gym turnover, I probably won't go in more than once or twice, and so that's a good session if they have boulders up that are that difficult. But yes, I do run into that problem sometimes where I'll try and complete the hardest boulders at the gym in a session, but then you have things that I really enjoy the most when I'm training inside, which are like tension board, moon board, kilter board. And then there's no limit to the challenges on those. So
I imagine like commercial gyms 5 years ago, if you had gone in, it's going to be a lot more challenging to get something great out of it, because especially if you're traveling, like most commercial gyms aren't setting above a handful of V11s or if that, And now that boards are becoming more popular, I think that's really valuable for the stronger climbers, because gyms do seem to be going away from the filling in the T-nuts or, just setting a bunch of holes on the wall.
Low.
Density's super low in commercial gyms. So.
Sure. Yeah. So as I was growing up in Boise, climbing, I would run into that problem. And then through college, when I was climbing, I'd run into that issue of running out of climbs, and we just had the one gym in Boise, and so I would be going in 3 or 4 times a week, and usually I would be able to climb everything in the new set in a session, and but that's where the creating my own boulders kind of came in. That's where I really enjoyed that process of it. And so now with the boards, we didn't have a board back then, but now with the introduction of the boards, it's makes that component even more fun. The session.
Those are pretty much a must-have anymore.
I agree. Yeah,
you were like one of the first pros and one of the first really strong boulders to kind of be open about talking about training. And it looked like it was in a more systematic way, instead of, we'd see a lot of pros post, I'm going to go train tonight, and that's the only time they do it for 3 months, but you were pretty early and open about it. When did that start?
Yeah, thanks. Sometimes I think training is can be just as fun as rock climbing. Totally. Everything's a project. So it's something that I've always been into, and I think when any habit that I have right now in my life is probably happened because I sent my project that day, or I think that I sent my project because of it. So
like superstitions type
exactly.
of,
So I eat oatmeal every morning, and that happened because I ate oatmeal one morning and sent my project that day. And so I eat oatmeal every morning, and that won't change until one day I eat eggs and send my project. So there's something to be said for that. But I've gone in and lifted weights. I do hang boarding and OTGs, and I've seen gains from those things, and I've seen it come through in my climbing. And so when I think that I'm doing something that's helping with my climbing, then I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah. How often do you experiment and then just throw things out?
Yeah, I do that pretty often. Actually, very often. I'll kind of either learn more information about certain lifts where, I've been doing this, but studies are kind of now saying that they might not be as helpful as I'd like, or my time is better spent elsewhere. So then I'll try to mix things up. But really, I think the best training program is the one that you'll be consistent with.
For sure.
So it's always got to be fun. So I know I hangboard often, and I know that maybe there's a protocol that's out there that's better for me to do than what I'm doing now. But the one I'm doing now is fun for me.
Yeah.
So I do it 2 or 3 times a week, and I look forward to it. And so I think that's the best one for me.
Yeah, I think what you just said is really important, that you look forward to it. You know, it should never be this drudgery. Like you have, oh God, I have to go to the gym again. And, you know, I can't believe I'm going to have to do this. It should be that you're looking forward to do it, you know?
Absolutely.
I think that's a massive thing. A lot of people forget is that they'll throw out something that's fun for them to try to add in this supposedly better way. And then they do it 3 times and stop training entirely.
Sure. So. Yeah. That can be tough. So that's really the main motivation. And like I said, where training can be almost as fun as climbing, where I'll have certain projects like, I really want to do this 1-arm hang with this amount of weight for 5 seconds. Like that's my project.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do what it takes to build up to that. Something like that, or like on the campus board, I really want to stick this 1.610 or 1.59.5. Those kind of things, just to try and start and push myself more and more.
Yeah, and those don't necessarily have to be things that directly relate to your climbing. They're just things that have come in, are similar things you've been doing for years.
Yeah.
And you just want to get better and better at those things.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. And I think it's a smart way to go with training.
Thanks.
You know, it keeps it really fun, makes it measurable over long periods of time, you know, instead of I'm going to campus for 3 weeks and then see how it helps me.
Sure.
It's I'm going to project 1.48 for me, 1.59.5 or 1.610 for you.
Sure.
And see over a long period of time how that affects my climbing.
Yeah.
You know, how it impacts it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like I said, you know, if I'm doing something and it feels like it works, I'm sticking with that. So
totally. How has your training changed from like the Boise days to now?
Yeah, I think a lot less like junk miles on the wall, I guess you could say. And a lot
That's kind of how we all started, right?
Sure.
Like stay on the wall
volume.
longer, do more.
Right.
Yeah.
And that might be appropriate for some people based on their goals and where they're at and their climbing and how they're developing. But for me, it's becoming more and more. I've finally realized I'm good enough. I'm good enough at climbing, and that's maybe not my limiting factor on these harder boulder problems.
Right.
Maybe it's my power or my finger strength, or my core strength, and these are some of the things that I should be focusing on more and more.
Yeah, that's a super important way to look at it. You know, I put up a post on Instagram last year sometime that was 2 pie charts. One was where I was last year, where I am now. And last year it was, I need to get better. And this year it's, I need to get stronger. I feel like I'm climbing well enough to reach my goals. Now I just have to focus on getting stronger again.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And I think those 2 shifts are a really easy way to look at it, because people get lost in this giant cloud of all these training stimulus that they could be using, you know? And they don't really know where to go. This paralysis by analysis or whatever.
Sure.
And
and you know, one way isn't the right way for everyone.
Right.
It's always so dependent on the person.
Yeah. Switches over time.
Yeah. You know, I think, especially if you're a beginner climber, those junk miles might not be junk miles. They might be opportunities for you to learn in these techniques. But, you know, I've been climbing for 17 or 18 years now, and I with very specific technique work, and I've finally figured out, I think that I'm at the point where that's not quite my limiting factor anymore, but that's just for me. I think that everyone should have their own specified program that
what
they're
specific
following.
Things were you doing technique wise? Like what were the things you were zeroing in on and focusing on?
Yeah, so I mean, the last couple of years it's been a lot of hip work, hip mobility, and really hip positioning on the wall. So I would try and play around with, is it better for my hips to be into the wall, or is it better to sag, and when and why is it better one way or the other on certain types of movements, and then try and be systematic about that.
I'm glad you used that as example number one.
Sure.
Because there's this like trope out there that's always have your hips close to the wall, that's a rule we all learn, and it shouldn't be a rule at all.
Sometimes you got to sag, sometimes campusing's the best way because your hips are right underneath. So
totally. It's super interesting to hear you say that, because again, like, you were early in the like putting it out there that you're training in a systematic way. I also don't hear a lot of pros talk about, I really put some intentional time into learning how to climb.
Sure.
It's more this thing that just happens, and it sounds like you're putting a lot of brain power and energy and intention into that.
Yeah, thanks. I've noticed that as well with a lot of climbers, especially at the top end, the like almost like a skate mentality where it's chill. Like, it was like I did that. It was chill. I didn't really have to try very hard. Or maybe like I don't care very much. It's just kind of I'm just good at it.
Yeah.
Which maybe some people are, but I get really into training. And I know that I'm a good climber because I train to be a good climber.
Yeah. That's
and
super important.
I'm not afraid to admit that.
Yeah. Good.
And in fact, I want to share that with people as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the sharing it with people, you're coaching at ABC, right?
Yes, that's right.
Are you bringing these philosophies, which are incredibly smart, by the way, are you bringing those to the kids and talking about these things with the kids?
Sure. Every time I'm in there coaching, I try and explain something new, and again, everyone's their own individual. Not one thing is going to work for everyone. And so that's what's so important with being one-on-one with these kids, and just really analyzing their technique and kind of where they're deficient as well. And trying to improve their skill that way. As far as programming goes, Robin, the head coach there, does an amazing job with the programming, and Ryan as well. And so I don't program as much, but I do try to bring my philosophies to the team as well.
I think them having a high-level pro athlete to look up to and to learn from, whose attitude is, I'm going to work hard for it, and I know I'm good at it because I worked hard for it. I think that's massive for kids to have, because it can really become all about who wins the comps, you know, and that's where they find their value. But hearing you talk, if they're picking up on that at all, they're winning hugely.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I think that's massive.
Yeah, thanks.
So the kind of the impetus for this conversation initially was a post you made on Instagram, and I see you out there pushing limits, putting up first ascents, and I think all of us, everybody in the climbing world who pays attention admires that sort of thing, and a lot of us do strive to do first ascents, or at least pay attention to the people that are and know the history. And you, in the video that I got tagged in, and actually it was Jay Schultes, who also suggested Troy Photo, a recent guest on the podcast, to me. He said, Power Company Climbing, you need to have a conversation about this. And it was a first ascent you had done in Idaho, right?
Oh, yeah. This one, yeah.
And in the original video, you had just tapped the pad on your way by.
Dab.
Obviously didn't make a difference, but you had tapped it. And there was some pushback that you had dabbed, and then you redid the boulder past that point, and then you turn around, reach your foot back, and just tap the pad anyway, flip off the camera, continue climbing. And And I think that's a pretty powerful statement that I'd love to dig into a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to.
So why, first off, was there a conversation when your foot dabbed the first time about, I don't know if I should post this video, I don't know if I should call it a first ascent? Was there that conversation?
There wasn't really the conversation of whether I was going to post the video, and there also wasn't the conversation of whether I thought it was a first ascent. I knew that it didn't help me send it, and I'm kind of in that camp where we should believe people when they when they say if it helped or not,
especially if you're posting a video of the tiny dab.
I posted the whole thing.
Why not?
I mentioned in the comment or the caption as well, there's a dab, but I don't believe it it helped me at all. And there wasn't a huge pushback at all. There were a few people, and I'm princess in the pea. Like,
right.
If not everyone is happy, then that's just like keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
So and it's just some of those negative comments, and then just kind of hearing that you can't call it a first ascent if there's a dab. It kind of ran through my brain, and but my attitude was, I just want, like, I feel like I've climbed lots of boulders, and I feel like I have a decent reputation to where I want people to believe me when I say, this didn't help me. And so I don't have anyone in particular in my brain. In fact, I don't think I know any of the people that called me out, but that was kind of my motivation to go back to it, climb it again, and be kind of sassy about it.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, all in good fun.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's I wasn't not trying to make any huge statement or anything besides like let's believe people when they say that. So
and I think I was just talking to Will Anglin the other day, and 10 years ago, before there was uncut video of everything, we probably would have had a photo, and that would have been it, and nobody would have questioned it, not for a second.
Yeah.
But the little dab that happens, and then being honest about it, for some reason there are people who are so stuck on these rules that we have, as if they're written in stone and you can't do anything about them. They just are the rules.
Sure.
I think, I'm not sure if that's a healthy thing, to be stuck in the rules as if they have to be that way all the time.
Yeah. And it's worth having a conversation about. Absolutely. I would love to have to talk to people about the ethics of dabbing versus not dabbing. That's totally fine. But it's like kind of the call out culture of like, your opinion is the right one.
Yeah.
This wasn't a real send or a real FA. That's where it's more annoying.
Are you familiar with, I think I have this right. I didn't look it up beforehand, but I think this is right. That Fred Nicole, when he sent Dominator in Yosemite, kicked his spotter and just called it good. Was like, I did it,
Sure.
Didn't stop my swing.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then Ron Kalk later came back and made a big deal out of, well, you kicked Mary, so that doesn't count. And Fred was just like, I don't care. You know? You don't have to count it.
Yeah. That's something I wish I could do. I wasn't aware of that story, but I'm sure that's happened so many times.
A lot of times.
And, it would just be easy to just post a photo instead of the video or whatever in that case. But yeah.
And where do you draw the line? Like, is reaching down and picking up your chalk bag dabbing?
Right.
Because essentially you did touch the ground. You connected through the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No, it's absolutely worth a debate. But I mean, definitely my stance, and my mind could change tomorrow, but definitely right now, my stance is if it doesn't help you, then I think you're good to go. But you just have to be honest with yourself.
Yep, totally. I think
that's where it gets
the most
tricky.
important thing always. You know, are there rules that you won't bend on in bouldering?
Like heel hooking on the moon board? Or
Yeah, exactly.
No, man, that I'm trying to think of rules.
Like there's
I'm just trying to have fun on the rocks out there.
Like
That's
I've heard
the main
people
thing.
say no knees on top outs or it doesn't count
No.
or like there's definitely and I can understand this one. There's a sit start versus the like
A squat start.
squat start, you know, and
Oh man, no, I'm pretty lax on that stuff. And I mean, people are different, but yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to have fun climbing rocks. So I don't think there has to be too many rules. As long as if you want to say I climbed this specific boulder, then you got to start and finish in the same place as the person that made the FA and named and graded it. That's the rule. That's obviously the rule. You can't start in the middle and call it good.
right.
But
And with that's an interesting
outside of that.
rule too. Like, what if a, different position using the same start holds appears somehow, like a high heel hook or something?
Sure,
that
your feet above the head.
ascensionist didn't think
that happens.
of, Yeah.
Well, I mean, different beta comes all the time. Comes and go better beta.
Yeah,
it happens, and so I mean, in those cases, things get downgraded, and that's just how it should be. You keep the name, just change the grade.
Yeah,
because we found a better way to do it.
People take downgrading as if it's some like slight against them personally sometimes, and I don't see this at the higher levels as much as I do at the like intermediate level, where they've attached their ego to this grade.
Sure.
And just recently, you did the game.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I saw on your 8A comments that you called it 15/16, and you said, that seems fair for my height.
Sure.
And that brings up a lot of interesting questions. Like, are there times when you think your height helped, but you're like, I'm taking the grade anyway?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're
Absolutely.
doing first ascents, you're grading for your height.
Yeah.
So, but then we have this culture of where we're afraid to upgrade things.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not supposed to upgrade. Downgrading is totally cool. You're not supposed to upgrade. But what if someone with your wingspan does the FA and it feels harder for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I am leaning more towards upgrading more things. I think that grades have started to kind of evolve in that direction, where V16 has been really solidified and legitimized, and
that sounds
it's not
so
as
crazy
mystical
in my head for you to say.
It's not as mystical of a grade anymore. We have several confirmed of that grade, a few in the US, and I think that's just how grades are going to progress. Is someone's going to do 5 or 6 V16s, and then they'll do something harder. Well, that's got to be V17, and they'll do 5 or 6 of those, and then they'll do something way harder. So I think that's just going to be how it is, and moving on and on. For such a long time, there was kind of mystique to the V16 grade. I think now we have a huge range of V15s. Certainly that I've done. I've done several now, and comparing. Where it gets tricky is when you're comparing the difficulty of two problems. But
right.
That being said, comparing the easiest 2 or 3 V15s I've done to something like the game, I'm like, man, the game is maybe like 2 grades harder. Than the easiest.
Was the game originally put up as 16?
Yeah,
it was. What Daniel called it.
Yeah. Then it cleaned up a bit as things tend to do, I guess, and made some of the crimps a little bit better.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
And so is it settled in at 15 or?
Yeah. So everyone that's done it, I got the 6th ascent.
Okay.
Everyone that's done it has called it 15.
Okay.
Yeah. And just like a note on my A-Day, however important it is, I did call it 15.
Yeah, it's listed as 15.
Sure.
And just
yeah.
in the comment has the slash grade. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was just my personal grade. My personal opinion was that it was at the high end of the 15 scale. Yeah. I think that maybe if it was put up today, it might have been called 16.
Yeah.
Without as much hesitation as it was 10 years ago.
Sure. So. And I saw that you climbed with Daniel shortly after. Did you guys have yesterday. A conversation about it?
We talked a little bit about it. Really not too much. I think that's kind of our personalities. We're more cool. I did that and on to the next. We always have another objective. So most of our conversation was about current projects and then the thing that we're trying up in Eldo Canyon.
Yeah, which looks amazing.
Oh yeah, it's incredible and really, really hard.
Do you find that's the norm amongst climbers who are climbing V14 through V16 or harder? Is that there's not tons of conversation about, is that this grade or this grade? Does that seem to be the case?
Yeah, in my experience, it is. It's hard for me to speak for other people. And
I'm just curious because I hear a lot of squabbling around like V5, V6 or V7, V8, you know, and when I hear these conversations, I'm like, I don't know the difference between V5 and V6 or V7 and V8. Like I've climbed some V8s that felt like V10 and I've climbed some V8s that felt like V6.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are.
Sure.
You know, I don't have a solid enough vision of what each grade is to know, so I can't even argue it.
Yeah.
You know, but people really want to squabble about where things are supposed to fit into these nice little slots, you know.
It's not going to work that way. I think grades are fun, and I think grades are important generally, but I think what you want to be chasing is challenges, and don't chase grades, chase challenges. Yeah. So, you know, if I'm looking at a piece of rock that's really going to challenge my weaknesses, maybe it's only V6. But that's less important than if it's challenging.
Let's be real though. Is that true? Are there V6s that challenge you?
I did one in Joshua Tree last week. And I did flash it, but I might have grunted a little bit because it was quite hard.
Was it a harder flash than Iron Resolution?
No.
Okay. I was hoping for a yes.
Yeah, so Iron Resolution is harder than Planet X. Controversial statement.
But I'm sure true.
Yeah.
Why do you think grades are important?
I think that it's a good thing to work towards. It's also a motivating thing for me because it almost feels like something with substance to it and kind of an affirmation that hard work is paying off. So that's how I see it. If I want to become a better climber, I might not be pushing those harder grades. I'm trying to improve myself on challenges. But if there's an absolutely beautiful climb that's V0, I might want to climb it. But I'm probably going to want to climb the thing that's more challenging, maybe an ugly looking V15. I'll probably go to that before because and people are different.
Totally.
That's just me. It's that beautiful V0 isn't going to stimulate me as much mentally in my problem solving skills and the challenge. I'm probably going to climb it and forget it 3 minutes later. But something that I really have to work out and piece together and puzzle, that's why I climb. Is for the challenge of it and the puzzle solving of it.
That's really important. That's why I climb, you know. There are lots of people out there who don't like projecting, don't like to try super hard things. They don't want to go out there and bang their head against the same
And I don't
boulder.
think there's too much wrong with that or anything wrong with that. You're psyched on what you're psyched on, but you know what I'm psyched on is challenging myself, and
Yep.
and if it's a beautiful boulder, that's bonus.
Yep.
But it's not my first priority.
Yeah, that's super interesting too. You know, like that's the Adamondra method. Is
Sure.
like I don't care what it looks like, or if it's on this chossy little cliff and it's
Yeah.
a traverse the base. You know, if it's hard, it's hard, and if I'm challenged by it, great. Whereas Magos takes the other approach of if I'm not inspired by it, I don't want to climb on it. You know.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, the best balance is when it is beautiful and it is
Sure.
inspiring and it's challenging.
Yeah.
But that, that is the top of the list for me. Is it's hard. It's at that appropriate grade range where it's likely going to be a good challenge for me. But the ones that I really seek out have all of those elements to it.
Yeah, totally. But why not continue to challenge yourself on the not so pretty
absolutely.
things in the
no,
meantime?
I'm not.
you
Yeah,
know?
I'm not gonna snub a boulder just because it doesn't look cool or just because it's a low ball or traverse. And I'll be. I can get just as psyched on that as other things. So.
What about eliminates? Are you like? Do you go out and climb on eliminates?
Love it.
Yeah,
I'm all about going out and having
I'm a fan
fun
too.
on rock. So I like to climb in my tennis shoes quite a bit. I clean them. I clean my tennis shoes just in case you're worried.
Good call. We got some hate on that.
I like to climb my tennis shoes. I try to campus boulders.
Yeah.
I just like it's so much fun to go to an area and have it be a playground. While respecting the rock and
Sure.
and making sure that it's climbable for others.
Yep.
That's why I mentioned cleaning my shoes and stuff. That's important, of course. But man, I'm just there to have fun and play around on a playground. And if it's really fun to find a boulder to climb in tennis shoes, that's really fun to climb in climbing shoes, but then that just adds that extra challenge that I was talking about. When you can grab the same holds and climb the same climb that you love, but add that extra challenge of climbing it in your tennis shoes, that it's just a little more fun.
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite things to do in Waco, since my wife and I are always projecting different things, is when we go to her project, I'll climb it or something nearby with as many different betas as possible,
fun.
and just find all these interesting, creative ways to climb it, eliminates and weird sequences and, just weird methods. So super fun being creative like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've done a lot of, I kind of love going out climbing with people that might be climbing or psyched on boulders that are a little bit lower than I'm climbing, and I'll try those, but then, I'll keep spotting and supporting them, and then I'll try and find eliminates or exactly what you were saying, kind of go around and to boulders surrounding it and see what I can campus.
Super fun.
Yeah.
When you guys are in the Tension Training Center, do you talk in terms of grades there at all? Like, are the problems graded? Do you discuss them in that way? Do you, like, when you're working on a project, do you put a grade on it?
Yeah, I put a grade on it just because it's motivating for myself, and I hope motivating for other people. I mean, it's cool to set a boulder and say it's in the gym and say it's V14 and then see who shows up to try it out as well. And I mean, I've noticed other people coming in and trying that climb because it gets that grade also.
Sure.
And so they know it's going to be that challenge, and they want to step up to the challenge of that. As far as like discussing the grades, not as much. And honestly, when I go into tension, usually in the morning or early afternoon in climbs, so I'm almost always by myself.
Gotcha.
But I love climbing with other people, but that's just how it usually works out. But yeah, usually when I'm there, we're just kind of shooting the shit and
just curious. We have
climbing together. We don't have as much intense conversations about grades. Or
we have a
like
grading
that.
system on our wall that Todd Skinner used to use. That's easy, tricky, hard, desperate, savage, Hoss.
Oh, that's cool.
And I don't really know what the what like V grades that correlates to. I really have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, we just randomly assign these words to climbs, and
Yeah.
and because of it, I haven't really thought in terms of grade in there at all in a while. There are like times when I'm like, oh, this feels really hard. Like this could be one of the hardest things I've ever climbed. It must be around this level, you know?
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's been an interesting way to keep people from thinking in terms of grades. Like, oh, I want to do this V5. You know, it's more
Sure.
like, I want to do this thing that's challenging to me. I have no
great.
idea what anyone else thinks it is.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and that's ideal when you can say that to yourself. When you cannot look at the grades and you're just looking at a boulder and you're thinking, this is going to be a challenge. I'm going to have to try really hard to complete this.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ultimate. It's nice when there is a high grade attached to it.
Yeah.
I think that's the best because you get a
Totally.
little bit more for your effort.
And we like to check those boxes, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
like
all into that.
some method of measuring this thing we spend so much time on, you
Yeah.
know, and I think grades are probably the best method of measuring that we have.
Yeah, I think so too.
As
Yeah,
imperfect as it is.
it's
what we've got.
imperfect, but yeah, we're in a qualitative sport, and so it's hard to quantify progress except through grades. So
Yeah. So this is sort of a selfish question, just me as a coach.
Yeah, no worries.
I have lots of clients who end up spending time training by themselves a lot, you know, and I'm pretty self-motivated, so I can do that. And I assume you're pretty self-motivated as well. What advice do you have to give to people who have to train by themselves, and how can you get in there, stay motivated, and keep challenging yourself?
Sure. Well, for me, I am competitive, but really only against myself. So, I mean, I do climbing competitions, but I don't care as much about how I do versus, me against another person. It's more, I'll be disappointed if I don't climb as well as I think I used to.
Right.
If I don't do as well in a comp and I'm like, well, last year I would have done way better in the comp. That's kind of the ultimate failure for me. If I'm not better than I was yesterday, then that hurts a lot. So I am competitive against myself. So I track what I'm doing in the gym. So that I try to keep it quantitative. Like I said, I know my 5 rep max on bench, squat, overhead press, clean, all of that. I know what I can get off the ground with the wide pinch, with the 20 mil, with the 10 mil. I know how much weight I can add for a 5-second hang on the 20 mil and the 15 mil. I've tracked all that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so every time I'm in the gym and it's like a max day, I'm trying to beat my latest score. And often I do, but I don't always. And so that's kind of how I stay.
Well, if you did always,
Yeah.
it would just be so far off the charts at this point. That,
Right. Yeah. And that's something that's hard to accept, is not always beating what you were.
Well, you
but
said
you
that,
just got to trust the process.
you said that those days where you're not better than you were yesterday hurt. So that means you've experienced it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that, especially if there are a couple of those days in a row, or
Right.
3 or 4 sessions out of 6 that
Yeah.
didn't feel great? How do you deal with those?
Yeah.
And then keep coming in by yourself to keep training.
Sure. I think part of it is trusting the process and knowing that your body goes through phases and your psyche goes through phases. That's definitely part of it. I also think that that's good and that's normal. So, for example, nutrition is a really big aspect for me. I think it's also why I've had the longevity that I've had, where I've been able to improve for years now. I've had pretty steady progress. I think is because my recovery is really good. And so then I can just focus on those things, on those weaknesses. And as long as my skill is improving and my strength is improving, then it's all good. So I know that I need seasons where I bulk where I'm eating a little more
Right.
during strength building seasons,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'm not going to climb as well, or maybe my 15 mil hang isn't going to be as good.
Right.
If I'm
That's
up
a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
7-8 pounds up.
Yeah.
But I trust that process, and then I also cut before trips and stuff. So, and having that balance, I think, is important, especially in the sport that we're in, that we think of as being year round. We don't get the
Right.
luxury of having an off season.
Right.
But I think that our body needs that. So I continue to climb even when I'm up from where I'm a little less comfortable climbing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
I keep climbing, and I have performance days even still. But I know that that's helpful for my body to be at a slightly higher body fat percentage.
Yeah.
And then when it really matters, when I want to cut for a comp or for a trip, I'm going to Switzerland soon, so I just cut like 5 pounds. And I'm hoping for a few more, but when those things come, then my it's not going to be so detrimental to my body.
Right. What's your ideal fighting weight? How do you know what that number is that you're shooting for before a trip?
So I'm at 161 right now. I don't totally obsess over my weight, but I did weigh this morning. So it's 161 this morning, and I'd like to. That's 160 is like really the lightest I've been for a while, but I'd like to cut a couple pounds below that. Yeah. I don't think I'd be very comfortable going much past. But we've got my wife is a nutritionist, and we've got a good plan going for the next month.
Cool.
So,
I think that's really smart, and I think it's important to know this is what my fighting weight is.
Sure.
Because otherwise we're just in this constant downward spiral of I want to lose more, I want to lose more, I want to lose more, and then it becomes a really unhealthy thing.
Yeah, there's a line, it's very thin.
Yeah, and there's this new rhetoric popping up that says you should never lose weight for climbing, and I disagree with that. I think that there are times where it's appropriate, and there are times where gaining weight is appropriate.
Absolutely.
And you just have to be really mindful and approach both things in a really healthy way and be watchful of the signs that say, you're entering into a dangerous relationship here, so be careful.
Yeah, definitely.
So I appreciate that you have this plan in place.
Sure. And we're real careful with it. Yeah. And I just want to say, as far as performance goes, because it's all performance based. I don't care what my weight is. I want to perform as good as possible.
And that might mean gaining weight.
Exactly. Maybe sometimes strength comes first.
Yeah.
Actually, strength comes first. And so I don't want to sacrifice strength just to be a little lighter. I want to be at that optimal spot. So Haley's helped me out quite a bit. My wife Haley's helped me out quite a bit.
How soon after these trips do you put the weight back on?
Well, when I go to Swiss, usually just day one, I start putting. They've got a lot of good food there, and we're going to Font first, and
cool.
So there's be in France and in Paris, and so I'm sure that weight will start coming back up pretty soon.
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think it's healthy to be able to have these kind of conversations.
Right. And there's and I've seen. Of course, not mentioning any names, but I think especially in youth sports where they, in youth competitions where they're climbing and maybe they lose a few pounds and they notice that they're getting better results,
right?
And more admiration from people that they respect, and so they're like, well, I'm going to just keep losing.
It's a dangerous
it's an easy
cycle,
downward spiral, but it initiates from wanting. Better performance. And so I think if people knew their optimal weight and had a good nutrition plan in place that they trusted, then that could potentially be less of an issue.
Yeah, and it's up to us as coaches and you as an athlete that people are looking up to make it okay to eat more, gain weight while you're gaining strength.
Yeah.
it's a strength to weight ratio that we're trying to change.
I think a lot of people try and change that weight.
A lot of people go straight to weight.
It's strength first.
Yeah, and in the long term, put more strength on. That's going to make the ratio harder to break.
Sure.
You know, so,
and I'm hopeful to kind of to help kind of break that a little bit, and try to influence people to see that strength comes first. And you know, I'm like I said, I'm 160 pounds. I fell off the last move of Hypnotized Minds this last weekend, which might be the most intensely crimpy boulder in the world.
Yep.
So you can crimp and weigh 160 pounds. It's strength. Obviously, there's an optimal weight, and some people need to lose weight.
Yeah.
If they want to perform better, then that's kind of the easiest way to do it. But
let's get some stats here while we're talking weight. How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
5'11"?
Yeah, I just took
you're not
the DEXA
absurdly
scan.
tall, you know? It's not like you're 6'5", 160 pounds.
Yeah. Like my BMI is like 24 or something, like right there. But I just took a DEXA scan a couple days ago, and I was 8.5% body fat, 5'11", 160. It was like 2.5 was my mass, and then I have a +6 wingspan.
Wow.
So, yeah,
that's an advantage.
The stats, yeah, that's probably my favorite stat there. Yeah,
yeah, that'd be my favorite stat too. So, what do you think? Just as a total guess, you said your fat level right now is 8.6.
Oh, it was 8.5. Yeah.
8.5. Where do you think that goes to when you're not in the midst of like cutting for a trip?
I don't think that I'm often over 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of doubt I'm ever over 10.
Yeah, just curious.
And
I think that's going to vary widely for people.
Sure.
Women especially are going to see some variance.
They should not be at 10.
Yeah.
Women. I think like real lean, like you're about to go into the Olympics, it's like 15% for women. And that's like very unsustainable. For men, it's about 5% is really the limit. If you go below that, it's pretty unsustainable.
Sounds crazy to me.
Yeah.
I like donuts way too much.
Right. And just so people know, that was a DEXA scan.
Yep.
Which measures like all fat. If you measure with like skin calipers at home, it's usually like double that. So
gotcha.
So like if you get like 4% on the calipers, it might be about 8% on the on the DEXA. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you know what it sounds like to me is that you're just not leaving yourself many excuses. I mean, ultimately, that's what it sounds like, and I think that's one of the healthiest approaches to sport that you can have. Is I'm gonna have some degree of control of all these factors in my life so that I don't have excuses when the numbers don't go up or when I'm not improving better.
Yeah.
And I think it's massively important for progress in your performance to get rid of those excuses. And I mean, this is one of the best examples I've ever heard of getting rid of all those things.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think that's my job right now. I'm working for companies, and my job is to perform.
Yeah.
That's my occupation. So I want to respect those companies that trust me to do that. And I love and appreciate those companies that trust me. And so I want to give back for them. And I want to do it, of course, for me firstly, and I also have my wife, got mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So, all those things combined, I don't want to just go out and pretend like I don't care, and just climb because it's fun, even though I climb because it's fun. But I also want to get in the gym and train and make sure that I'm able to perform as best as I can.
Totally. Well, I think those companies are lucky to have you. I think
thank you.
I think the kids on Team ABC are lucky to have you.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely blessed to be there.
Philosophies, and I think we are too. Keep inspiring us and keep pushing the limits.
Great, thank you.
So, thanks, man. I appreciate you
thanks
taking time out of the craziness of OR to sit down. So
no, thank you for pulling me away from the craziness of OR.
Yeah, man. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
I go into these conversations not really knowing the person that I'm going to be talking to. I mean, I follow them and I understand their achievements, what they've done. I know something about their background. I follow climbing pretty damn closely, but I don't know the person, and I don't know what drives them, and I don't know what their approach is exactly. And those are the things I really want to know here and what I want to talk to them about when I do these interviews. And some of the things about Matt really surprised me. Number one, how genuinely, ridiculously nice the guy is. It makes me feel like I'm an asshole, frankly. And I mean, sometimes I am, but super, super nice guy. He's an asset for sure to those companies that he represents and to those kids at ABC Climbing. And man, I think that's how every pro climber should act. This is a job. Matt treats it that way, and he loves it. And honestly, even though I knew Matt was one of the few pro climbers who really talks openly about his approach to training and, isn't afraid to say, hey, I lift weights. Hey, I'm going to build mass and I'm going to gain weight through here. And then I want to lose that weight right before I'm performing. And those aren't always conversations that are easy to have. He's not afraid to have them. And maybe what I appreciate most is his really intelligent approach to training, to grades, to performing, to progression. I want to see more of that in this industry, in this sport, in this lifestyle. So thanks, Matt, for being an example. I appreciate it massively, and I hope we get to do this again very, very soon. I can't wait to hear how your Swizzy trip goes, particularly after you just absolutely destroyed Waco in a really short trip. And you can find a link to that video right there in your show notes of Matt just destroying Waco, especially the day of the rodeo. Crushed everything. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I've got a million things to do. Like I mentioned before, CWA, May 13th to the 15th, May 16th to the 18th, Performance Climbing Coach Seminar in Colorado Springs. Hope to see all of you at one of those two events. There are links right there in your show notes. And also, if you're interested in really, really bad feet that are going to make you a better climber, check out the resistors and the diodes. You can find a link to those as well. And that book is coming soon. Be on the lookout. In the meantime, you can find us at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on the Facebook, on the Instagram, and on the Twitter. You're bound to find people talking about us, people twittering about us, but you're not going to find us there because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, 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 this time,